Welcome. I think we're live on my channel. This is Nervardia for those who are unfamiliar. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, about your channel? Because we're streaming on both channels, so some of my subscribers may not know you, some of yours may not know me.
Well, my channel, I am a Australian, so I don't actually exist.
Okay.
I I'm doing science, atheism, and advocacy work on my channel. There's a bit of everything for everyone. So, yeah, come pop over and check me out and see how I go and see if you like me. And if you do, subscribe, like, share, all the goodness.
Agreed. Yeah,
And
that's.
for everyone,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. And for anyone who's watching this who doesn't know who you are by some miracle, who are you?
I'm Telltale, Owen Morgan. Yeah, I talk about cults and stuff on my own channel, so you can give that a look if you're interested. I got to be honest, guys. I've never done multi-streaming before, and this is basically brand new software to me. It's the same software that Mr. Atheist uses, so if there are some weird hiccups or something, then let me know. But they're saying they can, on my end, they're saying everybody can hear both of us, so we seem to be in pretty good shape. People are saying I'm quiet. That's weird. Here, let me just amplify it on this end. Give me a second to turn
Um,
this knob. Okay, that should help.
I currently don't have anyone in my live chat, so I kind of need someone to pop over and let me give me some love.
We can shout it out on Twitter. That could help.
I have put it out, and a couple of people have liked it, I think.
Is my audio still quiet? I've been getting messages that it is. Let me see if I can amplify it if I need to. Is it better now or testing 1 2 3? Let me know if it sounds better on the live chat. Anyway, so what did we plan to talk about today? Is there something specific you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, well, I, as an Australian, look at America and notice a couple of things that I'm like, that's a little bit cult-like. So, of
Right.
course, me being a person who has literally no right to talk about American politics, decided to ask someone who is a lot better educated in the whole situation and is, of course, American, to talk about
Right.
things like um, American exceptionalism.
Okay.
And you actually wanted to talk more about dominionism, where American exceptionalism comes from, because I look at something like having to say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day at school. That's, to me, is a little bit cult like. The idea of you can't say anything bad against America, or else some people will be like, "How dare you say that?"
Right.
And any sort of criticism towards the American government, well, the American country, as well as the veterans and military, I also find to be a little bit cult-like.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to do a bit of a breakdown on American exceptionalism, to figure out, are Americans in a cult?
Right. Okay. That's interesting. It's an interesting point. And I agree that there are a lot of really weird cult tendencies, I guess. I think that largely all of those tendencies tend to route back to basically one source. It all kind of routes back to evangelicalism, which was kind of an ideology or like a playbook almost created in the 1970s by like Billy Graham, and the 70s and the 80s by Billy Graham and Jerry Falwell Sr. and a bunch of other people, right? And the end result of the end result of the evangelicalism trying to blend politics and religion seamlessly together was kind of an ultra nationalist, American exceptionalist kind of viewpoint. Although American exceptionalism does go back a lot further than that, from my understanding. It goes back all the way to like the 1900s, not just the 1970s. But they really popularized it and hammered it in and made it, a serious consideration in the 70s and the 80s. So, at any rate, we can talk about, America on the bite model. Although I feel that's fairly broad since America is
Yeah,
kind of
I
a
agree.
category. Yeah, not really a group necessarily. But we can look at some of the culty, like, mindsets and the culty behaviors and ideas that Americans tend to have, if you want to. Um, I can share my screen, but I wish that my screen was a little bit. All right, let's see. Do you want to try share? You want me to share my screen? We can take a look at the bite model.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right,
I'm
let's
not
see.
familiar with vMix at all, so
Okay,
I'll be like, ah.
it's kind of a piss poor. Like, I don't have an overlay or anything like that, but I don't know. For future streams, I'll design a really really nice overlay, and we can we'll go from there. But anyway, this is the old version of the bite model, and it's the one that I tend to go with when I'm doing any kind of research or anything, because I feel that the newer version of the bite model is hyper specific. Like, the creator, Stephen Hassan, modified it fairly recently to be more focused on the subjects that he's studying in this moment, rather than being something that can apply to cults. It applies more to, like, human trafficking type of situations, which is his current interest. So I used the older version that he wrote forever ago. And this is the older version here. We've got behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional controls. The four ways in which cults tend to control their members. If you, I actually spoke to Hassan about this on my channel a while back, but if you don't control people in these four ways, then they tend to reach out in one of the other four to try to figure out what's happening to them. Like, if you control their behavior but not their emotions, they'll reach out to a family member to figure out, like, what's happening to them and why it's happening, and you risk losing your grasp on that person. So you have to control these four areas, or you risk losing your grip, basically. That's
Yeah.
the premise behind the four categories on the bite model. But were there specific points? Why don't we start under behavior control? Are there specific points about American culture that kind of stand out to you?
Well, with behavior control, a couple of the ones that really jump up out at me probably would be the promote dependence and obedience,
How so?
modify behavior with dependence and obedience, sort of like, well, of course, it's the country you live in. So
Right.
if you aren't, control, if they don't control your behavior, you have to be obedient and dependent. And I suppose you could say that with all countries.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
there may be something here. Like, there may be a level past what you find with normal countries. Like, I want to try to, like, drill down and find how it's different from other countries if possible. Like, do you think that America goes above and beyond other countries with their dependence and obedience?
probably, I would. That one's a hard one to say now that I think
Mm,
about it. With the dependence and obedience, they do. The country does make you dependent with your wealth inequality.
mm,
So, if you don't have social mobility within the country, which America is not particularly good at,
right.
in regards to that, I you are dependent on where you are, and you have to stay obedient. Also, because you've got one of the highest incarceration rates
Mm.
on the planet.
That is a
Um,
problem.
you know,
And on top of
yeah,
that, you are, well, America is allowed to enslave incarcerated people. So that,
yeah,
they are literally slaves. Like, we had wildfires not long ago in
hmm
California. And you know who was out there fighting those wildfires? Prisoners. That's who.
the
That's
prisoners.
so messed up. There is literal slavery in the United
Mm.
States, and no one's talking about this.
I,
Anyway, I
I
interrupted.
do
Sorry.
believe that's the same in Australia as well, but I'm not that familiar with the justice system
Just
over
think it's
here.
messed up, huh?
It is very messed up, and it doesn't matter where you are in America,
Right.
Australia, and UK, wherever you are. If you have slaves, it's wrong.
Yeah.
The modified behavior with the rewards and punishments is definitely something that would hit kind of on the bite model for me, because of that. As soon as you, as I mentioned, said, oh, anything against America, such as criticizing it at all, there are a subsection of people in America who are all like, my freedoms,
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
like, we'll jump down your throat
Yeah.
and will
That's
cause
definitely true.
you, yeah, that's a definite modification, because you don't want to have, say, I think America could do better at this, and then all of a sudden 500 people are like dogpiling you.
Yeah, it's almost like a what's the term I'm looking for? It's almost like the chilling effect you get. You know, like you're afraid to kind of say something because these people are going to just lose their shit on you. And on top of that, like we're going to get into this a little bit more in information control, but it's almost like there are two different sets of like social media worlds. Like my daughter was talking to me the other day about TikTok, and she said she went to the Trump TikTok. And I was like, there's like a Trump TikTok, there's like a conservative TikTok and a liberal TikTok, and it's so bizarre like how completely separate these two things are, you know? It's really really weird.
Yeah. No, it's I did post when I was active on Quora about me basically ripping into America and its democracy,
Mm.
and it was one of my most interacted posts, because I was the one that was like, I laughed at America's idea of democracy, because
Mm.
there's horrible gerrymandering, there's horrible um,
Just
oh,
fucking
thank you, Zolfner,
everything.
for $2.
Oh,
Yeah.
Zolfner's on your stream. What's all this? Where is he
Yeah.
on? He's supposed to be on
Hey.
mine. It's messed up. You're betraying me.
He says, you guys keep streaming when I work or have a show. I'm sorry, mate.
That's funny. I don't have any super chats yet. That's super sad. I'm heartbroken. You guys got a super chat.
Yeah. Also, hello to my entire chat. There's quite a few people on, so I
Very
won't go
nice.
through everyone. Just a general hello, how are you all? And thank you for coming. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
watching. I have to say, I figured it was going to be kind of slow building up because we kind of jumped into this with no announcement, or I did anyways, because I hadn't created the stream yet. But here we are. We got like 250 people watching on my end, so that's pretty awesome, right?
Hello, everyone over there.
Anyways, all right, let me merge back to the other screen again. We can take a look at this. So we've got we've talked about a couple of these. Is there another one that you think applies specifically?
Um, Restrict or control sexuality is a big one. I
Mm.
don't really think we need to deep dive into that. Just the purity culture and
Yeah, yeah, a lot of that does come from like extremist evangelical kind of stuff, especially because the evangelical voting bloc steers the ship that is the Republican Party. Like they make up the policy for them and everything, and it's a huge problem, seriously. So that one makes sense for sure.
the next three are kind of all interrelated, because we touched on extreme wealth disparity, which was deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep, exploit you financially, and restrict leisure time and activities. Because the idea that the minimum wage to be a living wage in America, to a person who lives in Australia, where we have a livable minimum wage, is just bonkers.
Yeah.
And so, if you have to work full time and you still don't have enough money to survive, that's an exploitation financial exploitation. Like it's pretty hard to argue otherwise, which means that you might need 3 or 4 jobs working full time, which will deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep, which then of course restricts your leisure time because at one, you can't afford to do anything leisurable, and two, you're working full time. So I do kind of look at that and think there is a little bit of cultiness around that, and because of the arguments, especially by the Republican Party, to not put up the living wage to something like minimum wage to something livable, I consider that to be somewhat cult-like.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. I think that largely routes back to like the fact that the evangelical voting bloc steers the ship that is a Republican Party. Because I was reading recently, don't quote me on this because I'm not exactly sure. In fact, do me a favor and fact check me on this if I'm incorrect. Somebody put it in the comments, but I believe that Joe Biden said, the new president, was going to he was going to tie minimum wage to the median wage, which I don't know why that wasn't a thing in the first place. That means that it's automatically going to go up if the median goes up. I would absolutely love to see that. That would basically guarantee that we wouldn't have another long stretch of like 10, 15 years where the minimum wage just stayed stagnant. I think it's like still $7.25 right now at this moment. Like, that's absurd.
Yeah, we also have a little bit of a problem like that over here in Australia as well. Our wages aren't keeping in line with inflation either, our minimum wage. But we do have a yearly increase, though. We do have it. It's just not as good as it should be. We also have a lot of problems over here in Australia. But unlike in America, if saying that isn't a particularly controversial start.
That makes sense, yeah. You'll get attacked pretty hard now. But like I said, it's a little bit different now with, the fear of getting attacked or whatever. It's a little different now because it's like there are 2 sets of social media. There's the conservative social media and then everybody else at this point. It's very bizarre how this happened. I don't know like how this came to be, but that's what it is. So I don't worry too much about getting attacked for my ideas at this point because I know that Trump supporters have kind of isolated themselves into their own weird little pocket and they basically never come out. Like it's so strange. But anyway, did you want to take a look at the next one?
Yeah, why not?
Which one did we leave off at? I'm trying to see. We were on deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep, exploit you financially. That's absolutely no question. Like, that's obviously the case with the wealth inequality. Like, that's a serious problem in the U.S.
Yeah.
And then restrict leisure time and activities. Now, requiring you to seek permission for major decisions. I don't know that America does that any more than any other country, particularly. But the Republican Party, once you get into evangelicalism and stuff, it gets pretty rough. Next section.
Well, you need to, if you were gay or wanted to marry somebody of the same
That's true.
Gender as you had to really, really fight. But again, that's the same thing happened over here as well. We had a problem with that. So
yeah, that's a good point. And I don't like doing call outs or anything. But you remember that Australian YouTuber forever ago who was like who came to the conclusion where he was going to vote against the referendum. It was like they were sending people around to do a survey to see if gay marriage should be legal in Australia, and that YouTuber said he's going to vote no, he doesn't, even though he doesn't really care because he wanted to stick it to the SJWs. Do you remember that?
No, I don't. That was before I really got into the whole YouTube thing, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It was Bering. That's who it was. Bering. Just say the name.
There was actually a pair of gay people who were like, we're going to vote no. And conservative media in Australia was like, aha, see, even the gay people think this. And it's just like,
It's absurd, dude. It's so absurd. It kills me.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the next, I'm actually surprised at the fact that, on another note, that the time lag is not worse than it is. Like the time lag between when I say something and when you respond to it and stuff is really not bad at all. I'm genuinely surprised by that. Anyway,
The the dimensional portal must be pretty clear right now. It's
yeah,
like
I
Thursday
know.
morning. A lot of people are probably not at work.
You mean Wednesday night?
No, Thursday morning.
Okay, all right. I'll let it lie for the moment. So the next section is information control on the byte model. We covered behavior control. This is information control. Do you have any points on this that kind of stand out to you?
Pretty much all of it, really.
Mm,
Deliberately withhold and distort information. Maybe not forbid you from speaking with ex-members and critics, unless, of course, you want to talk about what I mentioned before. If someone is critical, you do kind of get that bit of a shun.
yeah,
Discourage access to non-cult sources of information, things like Fox News now, Newsmax, and OAN are
yeah.
just divide information in inside versus outside. Left wing versus right wing. Generate use and use propaganda extensively. Again, Fox News, and we've got a similar scourge in Australia called Sky News, and there's some of the
I've
things
seen
that
it.
they say is absolutely. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it was
absolutely
actually on like
vile.
my Apple TV for a while, or a Roku box or something that I had around, and I watched it. And I was like, "Holy shit, dude! This
Yeah,
is out there."
it's it's vile. Some of the
Yeah,
things that they say.
I know, but I have to say, I
Uh,
think Fox News is probably worse. And if it's not worse than Sky News, then Newsmax is, and OAN is. Those are pretty bad. Those are basically state media, like North Korea style state media at this point. Newsmax and OAN, at
yeah,
least.
yeah. Um, so gaslight, absolutely. The media in America is great at gaslighting you.
Yeah.
Confessions, maybe not so much.
Mm.
Uh, Require you to report thoughts and feelings, maybe not so much.
But it's.
Encourage you to spy and report,
But go ahead.
maybe. Maybe the last one, maybe. So,
I think that a lot of this is done, but it comes from different sources. And that's why I couldn't, in good conscience, say that, like, for example, America is a cult. I couldn't necessarily say the media is a cult or any one thing here. It's like they're all contributing to these points, and they're all kind of forming out an identity in their own way. But what is it that's driving these things to do this? Like, why is the mainstream media, specifically Fox News, and why is OAN and Newsmax, why are they like gaslighting and dividing information into insider versus outsider doctrine and withholding and distorting information? Why are they doing all of that? And tracking it all back, it it looks like the source of it is the ultra religious, ultra nationalist wing of the Republican Party. Like that's where it seems like it's coming from. And that's why I say dominionism and evangelicalism as the source of this stuff, the ultimate source. That's the cult.
yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. I'm going to give you a bit of a spoiler alert. I don't
Okay.
actually think people who live in America are in a cult.
Okay. I
But
think it has a lot of culty qualities, so.
it certainly does. Yeah, and as I mentioned to you earlier, the generate and use propaganda extensively is standing for the national the I said it earlier, Pledge of Allegiance,
That's fucking
standing
weird,
for the
right?
pledge. That's very, very weird. That's very, very culty. And that was one of the things that really made me think, especially after starting to watch your channel, that I was like, America seems kind of culty
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that
for sure.
sense.
I actually noticed that too, like the whole Pledge of Allegiance thing, and the fact that they put God everywhere. They put it in the Pledge of Allegiance. They put it on the money and everything else. And I tracked that back to like the 1950s, I think. That's when they started putting they put God everywhere and all of that other shit. It was a response to the godless communists back then when America was like at war with, Russia, the Cold War and things like that, and China, national
Mm.
atheism and all that. That's when it really started setting in and becoming really disturbing. But I believe
Mm.
America has actually said the Pledge of Allegiance like in schools every morning. I think they've said that for like hundreds of years, at least 100 years, because I remember Jehovah's Witnesses like dying on that hill, like refusing to give up and saying we're not going to say the pledge no matter what, and fought court battles over it and everything. It's a huge mess, which I don't know. I grew up not saying the Pledge of Allegiance because I was Jehovah's Witness, but in hindsight, I guess that was kind of the right thing, right? Like,
Mm.
just
Yeah,
by
because
chance
say Sage Owl in my chat says technically we aren't forced to do the pledge. They stopped in middle
anymore.
school and never got in trouble of it. Yeah, but I have seen footage of someone sitting down during the Pledge of Allegiance, and a bully came in and knocked their chair from underneath them, and they landed pretty hard. And and one of the questions is, "Oh, who's the true patriot?" Ha ha. And there was a very clear divide between the two the responses, because a lot of them were going, "Oh, of course, the kid that kicked the chair, you should stand for the Pledge of Allegiance," and rah rah, rah. And there was the other half was
Yeah.
like, the kid sitting down was the true patriot. But the fact that there was this argument between two groups of people going, who is the true patriot, for some, where it was like this kid physically assaulted another kid, and there were people saying that he was the true patriot because this kid refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. That for me is a very cult-like mentality,
Yeah, it's
if
fucking
that makes
batty.
sense.
Seriously. Yeah, it's batty. I know that well, I actually knew the person who fought the court battle in the 1930s to legally be allowed to not say the Pledge of Allegiance. She went to my congregation. She and her sister did,
Wow.
interestingly enough. Yeah. Like she would have lawyers calling her every now and then in her like 80s and 90s asking her questions. I think she died like 10 years ago or something now. But anyway, it was interesting to talk to her about it. By the way, before we move on to the next section, which is thought control, I wanted to take a look at some super chats and then you can take a look at yours. Will that work after I take a
Yep.
look at mine? Okay. First one I got, Hank Fournier. Now you do. I'm not sure what that means. Well, thank you, Hank. I appreciate that. Zolfner, we aren't a democracy. We're a democratic republic. You're right. That is very true. But democracy is an element in this and heavily respected in this American exceptionalist system. So I'm not sure what the context was behind that, but yeah, you're right. It's a democratic republic. Zolfner, I am the Republican Party. That's disturbing. Zolfner, geez, they're all coming from Zolfner. If you have work full time and can't survive, you need a better accountant. No, if you work full time and can't survive, what about like the people who like work at a minimum wage job? You know how much money that is? Not even minimum wage. Just say $10 an hour, 40 hours a week, every single week of the year. That's $1,700 per month. And I could be wrong. I think the median rent is like $1,000 a month. So, like, what do you do? How do you pay all of your bills and have health insurance and a car to get you to work and pay for your kids' school supplies on $700 a month? Like, it's literally not possible to do. But anyway, thank you for. Oh, and they can't afford an accountant either, so that was a moot point too. Anyway, thanks for the super chat, Zolfner. I have not isolated myself, liar. Zolfner says. Daniel Farmer, $1. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think I have two more, or maybe three. Let's see. Fox is fair and balanced. I know they say they're fair and balanced, but I do not think Fox is fair and balanced at all. The Betty White cult will get you all. Spooky Mega Gengar the Belmont. Betty White is cooler and also older than sliced bread. So there is that. You're right. The Betty White cult will get me in the end. Zolfner, I pledge to the American and Christian flag and the Bible like an American. That's really disturbing, dude. That's so disturbing. Why is anybody pledging allegiance to anything? I really don't know why people do that. And then finally, Zolfner, OMG, Bible, lol, I'm working. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. Do you have some?
Just one from Zolfner, so thank you, mate. Right-winger conservative coming to fund you. I appreciate the right-winger conservative money. I do appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, I guess you're a sellout now, aren't you? You're getting money from right-wing funders.
Yeah, definitely.
Concerning. Okay, let's take a look at the next section, which is thought control. Were there any on here that kind of, hit home with you?
Instill black versus white, us versus them, good versus evil thinking. So, liberal versus conservative. What else was there? One that one's a big one. Not Americans versus Americans there's a lot of as I mentioned earlier, as an Australian, I don't really have much of a right to comment on American politics, even though it does significantly influence my politics at home. But
I've heard you say that a couple of times. Do you think that I have a right to comment on Mormonism?
No, no, you do, because that's part of your. But I do recognize it's because religion, politics. You should never talk about it. Hence, talking about it on your channel right now. But I do recognize that as part of a person who's not American. I have had a couple of people go, Meredith, you live in Australia, you don't really have much of a right to talk about it.
That's bullshit. You can talk about anything you want. Like, nobody has a right to tell you that you have no right to talk about something. I think that's complete BS. Like, you can talk about it. I can talk about Australian politics, right? If you see something that's concerning, no matter where it is, you should be able to talk about it. We talk about China's politics all the time, don't we?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So don't listen to them.
It's okay. Thank you. But yeah, it's but I can recognize that some people will actually go get their hackles up, because sometimes I do get a couple of people commenting on Australian politics, and I'm like, you don't really know what you're talking about.
Right. Well, you got to know what you're talking about at least, but
yeah, you got to know what you're talking about. Yeah. But I do have I have had a lot of people. I have had in the past some people dismiss my my attitudes towards American politics because I am Australian. So there is that divide of, but it's a rare thing. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. So that's another
I know it does happen, but yeah, I agree with you. That is a good example of like the us versus them, good versus evil type of thing, and insider versus outsider doctrine, like we saw a minute ago in information control. But as long as you are well informed, I don't feel that anybody has a right to tell you that you don't have any place talking about something. I completely disagree with that fundamentally. But anyway, so there were a couple of other points on this one, right? What did you think?
Yeah. Well, change your identity, I don't really think applies. Use loaded languages and cliches to stop complex thoughts. Definitely, yes. I would definitely say that one. Because, my freedoms.
Yeah.
Yeah. America.
Yeah.
It's
dead on impression right there.
Yeah. So I do see that a lot. I often hear people go, oh, don't you want your freedom to own a gun, for example? And I'm like, right. I'd rather my freedom to be able to walk around and know I'm not going to get shot.
Yeah.
So
sure.
It's you've got to balance up those two freedoms, and living in a country that has really strict gun control, just knowing that I can walk around downtown and know that I'm not going to be shot. I was at Armory. I can't remember his name. The guy who got shot immediately after investigating
Ahmed Arbery, I believe. Yeah.
Arbery. Yeah, I
Yeah,
apologize. I really do apologize for that. That would never happen in Australia at all,
right.
because if you have gun control, that would never happen. We haven't had a mass shooting, I think, since the 1990s. We've had gun crime, of course, and we've had, but we haven't had anything since the Port Arthur massacre, which happened, I think it was 1996, where 32 people died or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was when we were like, we had major gun reforms, and it's stopped. And now I know that I can walk downtown and know that I'm not going to get killed by a gun, and that is more freedom. That is freedom. The freedom to not be afraid is something that I'm willing to accept over guns.
I
Yeah,
can totally
and
agree with you on that one. It's a
yeah,
huge problem, and it's something that's been crammed down people's throats by the NRA, who is backed by the evangelical voters. Like, it all kind of routes back to the Republican Party and the evangelical voting bloc. It's really disturbing stuff, man. And it's all
yeah,
contradictory too. Like, they're pro-life, quote unquote, but also pro-death penalty. For example, like, does every life matter, or does it not? Like, do only certain lives matter or
yeah.
not? It's all contradictory nonsense. You know.
Yeah, and it's sort of, you're living under a tyranny of the government, who can control your healthcare, because we have
Hmm.
universal healthcare, and it's like you're kind of doing that anyway by your healthcare, which is significantly more expensive, and insurance companies will very happily just go, no, you don't need that. I know
Oh yeah, it's
your doctor
worse
says you
care.
need it, but you don't need it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's significantly worse care.
it
Um,
is. It's a
so
problem.
Yeah. So that thought stopping cliche of, you don't have the freedom. It's like, I have a freedom of knowing that if I break my leg, I'm going to be able to go and get surgery and not cost me that leg.
Yeah, right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely
yeah.
know what you mean. I was watching David Pakman a while back, and he was talking about how he had he had his appendix taken out, and it cost him like $30,000 or some outrageous. I don't even remember what it was. It was too much, needless to say, and that's something called an inelastic demand. Like, if you need your appendix taken out, that's it. You have to have it
You
taken
needed it.
out. That money is coming out of your pocket one way or another. So I don't know. It's just messed up. But anyway, did we
Yeah.
cover? Where did we leave off on thought control? Did we finish it, or was
Loaded
there another?
language.
Right, right, right. Loaded
No,
language.
loaded
Okay.
language. Hypnotic or translates to indoctrinate. Maybe praying. I don't know. There's a lot of,
I would say,
maybe.
well, I would say this applies more in excessive meditation, singing, prayer, and chanting. But I would say saying the Pledge of Allegiance every morning would definitely fall into that category.
Yeah.
I just think that's so disturbing.
um, yeah. Allow only positive thoughts. No, not really. I don't think,
Right.
unless
I
there's
agree with
something that
you.
I'm missing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Reject rational analysis, critical thinking, and doubt. Yes.
Yeah, pretty
Yes.
heavily.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's
In
a huge problem.
yeah, in the sense of, as we mentioned earlier, it's sort of like, as soon as you are critical of Americans, then all of a sudden, like, 500 people jump down your throat telling you those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I think maybe um, a lot of the thought stopping techniques can also be like the excessive use of the American flag.
Hmm.
In Australia, we do not have the Australian. We definitely don't have the American flag, but we do
Right.
not have the Australian flag all over the place. I mean, we've got it, in maybe the library or something like that, but even then, maybe not. We don't have the flag just everywhere,
Not on
except for
bumper
like public
stickers and
buildings.
lighters and
No,
shoes
oh,
and.
we have. we have it on lighters and we have them on
Okay.
shoes and stuff like that, but it's not like the level that I'm seeing. Although, of course, I have a bias of seeing it through
Right.
social media. So you've got the nut picking fallacy
Hmm.
over there, but it's not it's not that big. I mean, the Australian flag comes up around Australia Day, like just before Australia Day, which is our national holiday,
Right.
which should be Invasion Day, but that's an entirely different conversation. um,
Right.
but yeah, that pops up, and occasionally might go into a souvenir shop and you can see like flip flops, which we call thongs,
Mm.
for
That's funny.
funsies.
I've never heard that. Okay.
Yeah, we call them thongs over here.
Okay.
So if you hear in Australia talking about wearing a thong, we're talking about flip
I'm gonna
flops.
start doing that. Ironically, it'll be hilarious.
Yeah, so if like we have that in like souvenir shops and things like that, but
Yeah.
we don't have it to the point where people will storm our national house and building and
Yeah.
wearing. Yeah, we don't have that level of nationalism.
Yeah. It's a problem over here, and the funniest and saddest thing about it is like when the founding fathers of America wrote the Constitution, they had very specific instructions for how the flag should be treated. And, you're never supposed to, like, if it's too old and tattered to use or to fly anymore, you're not supposed to burn it. You're supposed to dispose of it in a very specific way, fold it into a triangle and bury it, I think. And all kinds of very specific things. It would have been egregious to find people like wearing, the flag on their shirt or on their car. Oh my God, they would have just lost their shit. But none of that matters anymore to these people. They don't
Mm,
even give a shit what the founders felt or believed or thought, even if they claim to. They just do whatever they
yeah.
want to do, and they claim that the founders would have wanted that, whether they would or not. It's just so bizarre. The whole culture is really,
Mm,
really strange. But anyway,
okay.
did you want to take a
That's
look at the next section, which is, wait a minute, emotional
e-
control?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
And instill irrational fears or phobias of questioning or leaving the group. Uh, don't think so.
Mm.
Maybe not. I'm not sure. I can't say anything about that.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's too much of that. I think there's probably something there with people who say America, love it or leave it.
Mm,
But I would say that there are other points that are far stronger than that one. But yeah,
yeah, we have a couple of politicians and things like that in Australia who also says the same thing.
yeah,
But a lot of people look at these and know it for the dog whistle it is.
yeah.
So yeah,
That makes sense.
Label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong. I would absolutely think that 100%, because of the being gay, for example, is it's in some subsections of American culture, is just the worst thing ever.
Yeah,
Being critical of some of America again is
a
one of the
problem.
things. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, but definitely sexual expression is considered by some subsections of the American culture to be just horrible, and to the point where people sexually assault their daughters to find out if their hymen is still intact, which
yeah.
is completely biologically incorrect,
Right. Like a fundamental misunderstanding of everything.
of human biology. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on that one. Like I said for the last one, I would say that there are other points that apply more, but there are some very key ways in which emotional control is a serious problem in the U.S. That would be my take
Yeah.
on it. But
Yeah.
which one? Or what was the next one we were gonna hit?
Teach emotion stopping techniques.
Mm.
to prevent anger or homesickness.
Right.
Maybe I don't know.
Emotion stopping techniques, I don't think to a high degree with America, just more broadly, but I would say with the cults involved in pushing this stuff, definitely. And this goes back to the previous section, rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, and doubt. There's a lot of that in these cults that you deal with too.
Promote feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness.
Mm.
I don't know. I can't really say anything other than sexual repression of, especially if you are of the GRSM community.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, talking about poverty, the amount of lack of respect and compassion towards people who are living in poverty, and we were talking about the financial
Yeah.
exploitation in behavior control. That I do think that is a big part, because if you are poor, you are worthless and is shameful. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about with information control is your education system as well. It is heavily distorted
That's
as
true.
well.
That's a good point. It
Yeah,
is.
and that does definitely come from the Dominionist Republican sort of thing as well. So we
Yeah.
probably should have thought about that.
Yeah. But we mentioned it now, so that's what's important, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, I agree with
yeah.
you on
So
that point. And I would say guilt, shame, and unworthiness on the emotional control, like you were saying a minute ago. There's something called strict father morality, I think is what it's called. And it's this idea that basically if you can't succeed in life, then it's your fault. And people should not help you, because if you can't do it yourself, you don't deserve to accomplish it. Even if it's like super simple, basic, straightforward stuff. It's really, really toxic and really terrible. And it is kind of the morality adopted by a lot of Americans. It's a big problem, especially the
yeah,
Republican party and the people behind it.
yeah. The bootstrap sort of
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah, that's strict
Yeah.
parent morality. It's not good.
Shower you with praise and attention, or love bombing, maybe. Some of the loveliest people I've met are people who are from America. But you've got the classical Southern American hospitality.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot
yeah,
of I think this one specifically, like the love bombing thing, I think that's designed to apply more to groups than categories, though some of these do apply to categories also. So I would say love bombing mostly would apply to a category like, I'm sorry, mostly apply to a group like Dominionists or evangelical Christians or whatever, more than Americans. But yeah.
threaten your friends and family. Initially, I thought no, but then I realized how often, if a country doesn't do what America wants, it will actually attack the
That's true.
country.
That is that's a fair point. As sad as that is,
Yeah. So things like Venezuela was actually a strong democratically run country, and then America decided that they didn't want that, and all
right?
of a sudden now Venezuela has been absolutely demolished by the
That's
American
true.
policies that were brought in. So we are in a 20-year war right now because of America.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
fucking disappointing in my opinion.
Shun if you disobey or disbelieve. I don't really think so. Kind
More of a group
unless
kind of thing.
yeah, and teach that there is no happiness or peace outside of the group. I don't. Oh, maybe because I have had in the past, people go, America is the best and we have the best freedoms, and you're living in a tyranny, which is kind of teaching that there's no peace or happiness outside of the group.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
I
And
mean,
again, back to the whole love it or leave it kind of thing. If you don't want to live in America, then you don't have to stay here, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. And they portray America as like the freest, most amazing country. This is mostly Trump supporters and stuff that we're dealing with. But
yeah,
yeah, it's a huge problem for sure.
yeah. So, as I mentioned, I don't think Americans are in a cult. It's it's not like North Korea, for example,
Right.
which is.
Its own
But
can of
there are
worms.
definitely, yeah, but there's definitely, as you mentioned, a lot of cult-like aspects to American and to American, and you just keep coming back to the fact that you're talking about dominionism, and Republican attitudes.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it's a big
yeah, no,
problem for
it's
sure. There are a lot of cult-like qualities that come along with America, and they are a direct result of, evangelicals and dominionists, like you said a minute ago. A direct result of them, of extremist Christians trying to basically form American culture into something that's more useful to them, as sad as that is. And we have to fight against that kind of thing. Like, not just me as an American, but all of us as citizens of whatever country we're in. When politics and religion mix, it gets ugly every time, you know?
yeah, yeah, definitely. We've got some fighting over here in Australia too, because we've got a person who is our PM who goes to Hillsong, which is an actual cult. So yeah, that's really concerning
That is concerning.
for us. Yeah, there's a lot of things about, but he's not well liked by a lot of people that I know. So yeah,
Yeah, it's
which is
pretty scary
good news.
stuff. We just have to keep fighting against this shit, seriously. We have to keep fighting against
Yeah.
it and never give up. But anyway, I'll tell you what, why don't we sign off here? Was there something else you wanted to say? Like, where can people find your channel?
Well, my name is Meredith, but my channel's name is Navadia. And you can find me on YouTube and Twitter mainly. And yeah, you can also find me on Patreon if you wanted to chuck some money my way. But yeah, just pop over to my channel, say hello, watch my stuff. And yeah, thanks
Awesome.
for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your channel, and I'm glad to have you on mine also. As I
Yeah.
mentioned before, I'm Telltale. You guys may or may not know of me. If not, then check me out. I think I'm kind of interesting, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I
Alrighty.
guess we're going to sign out. I appreciate you guys coming. We'll talk to you next time, okay?
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, I'm off air on mine. You're going to have to hit end stream on yours.
Done.
Awesome. I think